Welcome everyone to the November meeting of the Warren County Board of Supervisors. Please rise while Supervisor McGowan, he's not here, Supervisor Sokol leads us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The clerk will read the roll.
Mr. Leggett?
Here.
Mr. Diamond?
Here.
Mr. McDevitt?
Here.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes, here, sorry.
Mr. Loeb?
Here.
Mr. Driscoll?
Here.
Mrs. Frazier?
Here.
Mr. Simpson?
I'm here.
Ms. Hogan? Mr. Dickinson? Mr. Merlino? Mr. Strauss?
Here.
Mr. Wild?
Here.
Mr. Beatty?
Here.
Mr. McGowan? Mr. Sokol?
Here.
Mr. Thomas?
Here.
Ms. Hyde? Mr. Garrity?
Here.
Chairman Conover?
Here. You should all have received the minutes of our October 19 meeting. Chair will entertain a motion regarding the minutes of October 19. Moved by Mr. Leggett, second. Second, Mr. Strauss, Supervisor Strauss, excuse me. Any additions, corrections? Ready for the question? All those in favor of approving the minutes of October 19 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. I'll now open the public hearing on the Warren County Community Development Block Grant Project number 119-7P F20-14 Countryside Adult Home Wastewater Connection. I request the clerk to read the notice.
The Warren County Board of Supervisors will hold a public hearing on Friday, November 16, 2018 at 10 a.m. in the Board of Supervisors meeting room on the second floor of the Warren County Municipal Center, 1340 State Route 9, Lake George, New York, for the purpose of hearing public comments on Warren County's current Community Development Block Grant in the amount of $400,000, Countryside Adult Home Wastewater Connection. The CDBG program is administered by the New York State Office of Community Renewal and provides resources to eligible local governments for housing, economic development, public facilities, public infrastructure, and planning activities with the principal purpose of benefiting low to moderate income persons. The hearing will provide further information about the progress of the ongoing project. Comments related to the effectiveness of administration of the project will also be received at that time. This hearing is being conducted pursuant to Section 570.486, Subpart 1 of the CFR, and in compliance with the requirements of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as amended.
Is there anyone here wishing to address the board regarding this grant? Then I will close the public hearing. And we have with us Pat Tadich, former Director of Planning for Warren County, who's handling this for us. Good morning, Pat.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board.
What do we have in front of us here today?
You have in front of you today a handout which describes the progress to date of the wastewater connection for the Countryside Adult Home. I'll just briefly go over these items. You certainly can read this at your leisure. And this is the second of two required public hearings for the funding award excuse me, that the county received in 2014. We received $400,000. We had tried several times in the past to receive funding for the Countryside Adult Home for various projects, and we are fortunate to get this funding award for this connection because we've had some issues on the septic system and the on-site septic system, and you know, it was our intent to try to achieve enough funding to do the connection to the town of Warrensburg's wastewater system. In addition to that, it's a way to ensure and protect the aquifer that's at the foot of the hill below the adult home and protect the town of Warrensburg's public water supply as well as the Schooner River. So I'm just going to go over this very briefly, and suffice it to say that the planning department has been the long-time applier for funding for various communities, for various projects over the last, well, 30 years, 30-some years. So We're very fortunate once again to receive funding, and our goal is to always to do a good job so that the county or any of the communities that are applying for funding, are always in good stead with the grantor agency. So let me just briefly go over this. You have this in front of you. As the notice indicated, the purpose is to provide information on the progress of the wastewater connection project. The project background, we received $400,200 in 2014 for this particular project. In addition, the county is also providing $300,000 to complete this project. And I will say that the town of Warrensburg has been very generous with both funding and manpower for this particular project. They were committed to originally $50,000 in the grant application. They certainly exceeded that amount. We're trying to reimburse them for additional monies that went over that amount. In addition to that, they had to they provided the special funding for a study related to this particular project. As all of you know, this project, this adult home, is owned, managed, and financially assisted by the county, and this project benefits those low and moderate income individuals who are residents of that home. And it's this particular facility, as you're probably all aware of this, but it's that space between those who cannot care for themselves at home and those who are not yet ready for a skilled nursing facility. So, and there are certainly a lot of residents of our communities that are in that middle ground, and certainly this place is of value to them. Some of the project issues that we encountered, and you're probably saying, well, Tricia, it's been 2014, here it is 2018. I could have never imagined some of the issues that we would run across by doing a force account project. Usually we're done in about 2 years, 2.5 years, particularly on a force account project. But we had some interesting scenarios that developed. We had to comply with Section 106 of the Tribal Consultation Reviews, and we had received approvals by the St. Regis Mohawk Tribe, the Stockbridge Munsee Mohican Tribe, and the Delaware Tribe of Oklahoma. And you say it's Oklahoma because they were relocated from the Maryland area to Oklahoma. So I don't know if they've been the happiest about that, considering what they required us to go through here. The Delaware Tribe felt that they didn't have sufficient information along the pathway of the sewer installation for the information that we gave them, and they required us to do a Phase 1 archaeological study. So when I mentioned earlier that we had to do a special study, the town of Warrensburg provided assistance to complete that archaeological study, and we are fortunate that we did not encounter anything that would give rise to a problem related to tribal funerary along that pathway. That certainly, that roadway has been disturbed many times, and I think whatever may have been there at one time is long since gone. So we did finish that, and as I said, the town of Warrensburg helped with that. Also, the project encountered delays in receiving bids on, we needed 9,500 feet of high density polyethylene pipe and related items, and the bidding occurred at a time when most of the manufacturers had been done producing pipe, and also our limitations were in purchasing. In truth, that's a small volume in comparison to other projects, but it was at that same time that the hurricanes were impacting Texas and Florida and those two southern portions of the country, and most of the materials that were being bought were being taken by those communities. So we weren't getting bids, and so we worked very hard to try to find bidders who would provide us the materials, and all CDBG projects must buy products, must use projects and materials that are manufactured in the United States. So that was another delay. Also, The project, as I said earlier, was a force account. We relied on the availability of the county DPW staff and the town of Warrensburg Water Department staff to complete the project. And the town and the county went a long ways to try to revise their already established priorities for the year, for the both years to assist with this project. So, you know, we're trying to stay on schedule. We have received 2 extensions. We'll see how far this year takes us before we have to ask for that for another several months to carry us into 2019. I think the county's generosity with this project in terms of providing the $300,000 allowed us to allow the project to secure directional boring services to expedite that installation along Spoon River Road and up the county access road to the home. So we started about, we got all the materials in late September, or they were arriving, and in September, actually the work began with the directional boring, and we knew from previous work that they had done that we would be able to move this along. My last comment here is that, so today, this information was provided by Cedarwood. Cedarwood is the engineer to the town of Warrensburg and is providing the engineering services. We have installed approximately 95% of the 9,500 feet of the HDPE pipe. We have another, 475 feet to do. We have a variety of valves, air relief pits, all things which I'm sure are foreign to everybody here. But anyways, there's a number of things that we have yet to do for the final installation. So I can say that all project partners have been working diligently to get this project in place. So overall, I would say this project, as reported by the engineer, is 85%.
Okay. Any questions for Pat regarding this?
Pardon me.
I just hope as I look out the window here, Pat, and see,
Yeah, I know.
See all that white stuff, that the project team do what you need to do to finish in good stead as soon as possible.
Right.
And I don't like exceeding budgets, but on the other hand, I don't like to see projects that linger and cost more as a result of lingering. So whatever needs to happen here, or at least from my perspective, let's get it done.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next public hearing is on the Warren County Sewer District Industrial Park Assessment Roll, and request the clerk to read the notice.
The Warren County Sewer District Industrial Park has completed the annual assessment of the cost of the increase and improvement of facilities apportioned to the Warren County Sewer District by reason of the intermunicipal agreement for South Queensbury Avenue Sanitary Sewer District. A benefit to tax roll for 2019 has been completed, showing the annual assessment on the lots and parcels of land in the Warren County Sewer District in proportion to the benefit with each lot or parcel will derive therefrom. The assessment roll describes each lot or parcel of land in such a manner that it may be ascertained and identified, and shows the names or names of the reputed owner or owners thereof, together with the aggregate amount of assessment levied upon each lot or parcel of land. A copy of said assessment roll is available for inspection during regular business hours by contacting the Clerk of the Board of Supervisors at the below stated address, and may be viewed on the Warren County website. Pursuant to Resolution Number 426, 2018, adopted by the Warren County Board of Supervisors, a public hearing will be held by the Warren County Board of Supervisors at the Board of Supervisors meeting rooms in the Warren County Municipal Center, 1340 State Route 9, Queensbury, New York, on the 16th day of November 2018 at 10 a.m., at which time and place said Board of Supervisors will hear and consider any objections that may be made to the assessment roll.
Is there anyone here wishing to address the Board of Supervisors regarding the Warren County Sewer District? Mr. Lowe.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I asked this question 5 years ago, but could you describe the extent to where the Warren County Sewer District is, please?
Yeah, there is. Mr. Swan. If you could come to the microphone, please. Thank you.
I could see you looked a little you could use some help on this one. This is basically...
I don't have the meets and bounds in my head, that's for sure.
This incorporates several parcels out at the airport that are in the IDA area there. And it works with and this goes to the Washington County Sewer District. So what happens is there's several properties on the Warren County side of Queensbury Avenue that are in that sewer district. The sewage goes to Washington County and we get billed back for it, and then created this district. I don't remember when it was, probably 20 years ago it was created.
And so the treatment is actually done, not at Glens Falls Sewer. It's
Right, it goes to
Washington.
Washington County,
Okay.
and they send us basically a bill. We develop the assessment roll and bill each one of these properties. I think it's on a per gallon basis. I'd have to go back and look, I can't remember.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Swan. No one else wishing to speak at the public hearing? I'll close the public hearing. Now I'll declare the public hearing open on the 2019 tentative budget and request that the clerk read the notice of the public hearing.
Notice is hereby given that the budget officer of the County of Warren has prepared and filed a proposed budget for the fiscal year 2019, and that the Board of Supervisors will meet in the Supervisors' Rooms at the Warren County Municipal Center on the 16th day of November 2018 at 10 a.m. for the purpose of holding a public hearing on the tentative budget of the County of Warren for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2019, and that at such hearing any person may be heard in favor of or against the tentative budget as compiled, or for or against any items therein contained. Copies of said tentative budget are available at the office of the Clerk of the Board of Supervisors in the Warren County Municipal Center, where they may be inspected or procured by any interested person during regular business hours and may be viewed on the Warren County website. Pursuant to Section 359 of the county law, the maximum salaries that may be fixed and payable during the fiscal year 2019 to members of the Board of Supervisors and to the chairman thereof are hereby specified as follows. Members of the Board of Supervisors, $17,735 each. Chairman of the Board of Supervisors, $21,994. Further notice is hereby given that the following is a summary of the tentative budget of Warren County for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2019. Gross appropriations of $156,880,886, less estimated revenues, not including sales tax credit and surplus appropriated, amounting to $112,150,790, leaving a balance of $44,730,096 to be raised by taxation.
Is there anyone here in the audience wishing to address the Board of Supervisors regarding the 2019 budget? There being no one, I will close the public hearing. Report of Chairman of the Board. On October 22nd, I attended the Support Services meeting. I also attended the County Facilities, Public Works, and Budget meeting. It was held on October 23rd. On the 26th, I met with Dave O'Brien and Beth Giles and to go over some of the things they were doing at the Lake George, Lake Champlain Regional Planning Board. Later that day, I had a meeting with Kevin Hajos and representatives from the fund regarding the SALT initiative, which is an initiative to try to reduce the use of road salt throughout the county. It was a very interesting meeting, and I think we're going to be hearing more about that and the county's involvement in that program as we move forward. On October 29th, I attended the LDC Economic Growth meeting. November 1, the Finance meeting. November 2nd, the Board meeting, of course, that we held on the budget, where the preliminary budget was presented by Frank Thomas, and we certainly once again thank Frank for all of his work in the development of the 2019 Warren County budget. On November 8th, we had a Budget Committee meeting to go over some of the ideas that people had regarding the 2019 budget. I did attend that meeting. And on November 13th, I participated along with Ryan Moore and Frank Thomas in a presentation before the Adirondack Regional Chamber of Commerce. They titled it State of the County Presentation at the Great Escape Motor Lodge. I think there was probably maybe 40 people in attendance or so. It was really a very nice breakfast type meeting. and I thank them for arranging that. And that concludes my report. Report by committee chairman. Supervisor Sokol. I'm sorry. Oh, Brad, you're here. I'm sorry.
Well, that's all right.
Supervisor McGowan.
Sometimes I do blend in. Hang on, let me help. Does this help? There. I just want to thank Frank for all the hard work at going through all my first budget meetings. It was a lot of work and intense, and I want to thank you very much. I think you did a very good job. Unfortunately, you know, it's a hard job, but you did your best, and I thank you for it. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Supervisor Sokol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, you took the words right out of my mouth, Supervisor McGowan. I too want to thank Frank, and it's been a new experience for Ryan as well as Christy and Tammy, so the entire team, I thought, did extremely well. Finance met on November 1st. Before you are resolutions 434, 435, 452, 453, 454, and 458. They were pretty standard. We had a very brief meeting, but if you do notice, on your table before you are two floor resolutions. Mr. Chairman, if it's okay with you at this time, and I can get your permission to introduce these.
Absolutely.
Okay, so if you recall, in early spring, we had Terry Cuomo from the Coroner's Department speak before the Finance Committee, and we had some rate issues with Albany Med. I did receive a call from our county administrator last Friday, and he's been working diligently on these two issues. At this point, I would like to turn it over to Ryan, and he can explain it.
Absolutely. Ryan?
So the county, as you know, contracts with Albany Medical Center for morgue and laboratory services, and we received a letter on October 12th notifying us that all of these services would be terminated by Albany Med effective November 30th. This resulted in a strong reaction from the state police, which uses Albany Med for these services, as well as our county and 21 other counties that also utilize Albany Med. And NISAC, the State Association of County Coroners and Medical Examiners, as well as the State Association of Funeral Directors also got involved. And as a result, Albany Med agreed on October 30th to continue providing limited morgue services at a higher rate than the current contract. And they're giving counties until November 30th to agree to that new rate. Otherwise, their services will be suspended. And that's the first of the two resolutions. The second of the two resolutions is to contract with NMS Labs for forensic toxicology services. And we would need to do this because Albany Med is committed to terminating these services effective November 30th. That's one thing that they still are not willing to provide. I'd like the board to know that the coroners in my office have worked very hard to come up with alternatives, but these two resolutions we feel are our best options. Glens Falls Hospital no longer provides morgue services. We looked at Ellis Hospital, and there were two problems with that. Number one, their morgue space is limited, and they're looking at potentially using trailers outside of the hospital to put bodies in, which doesn't sit very well with us. The second and more important reason is Dr. Sikorica, our forensic pathologist, doesn't practice at Ellis Hospital. I spoke with the district attorney, and it's very important to him, as well as the law enforcement community, that we continue to utilize Dr. Sikorica's services. I called Angelo Calbone. He's the CEO of Saratoga Hospital. They don't handle criminal autopsies there, but they will handle hospital deaths and unattended deaths. I asked if we could utilize their space. He said that he could help us here and there with onesies and twosies, he called them, but he can't be our destination. He just doesn't have the space. So that leaves us contracting with Albany Med for these morgue services. And in terms of forensic toxicology, our coroners looked around, called a number of different places. Essentially, the other companies that they talked to were middlemen for NMS, so they felt that NMS was our only option on that. and the purchasing department and the county attorney's office are also in the loop on that, as well as the morgue services contract. I want you to know that our coroners are participating in a stakeholder work group that's tasked with developing a better long-term strategy to address these services, both morgue and laboratory services. There's been talk about perhaps a regional center being developed. I and the other counties that I've talked to would be a lot more comfortable with that idea if we were certain that the state police in the state of New York were going to take the lead on that. But with permission of the chair, County Coroner Tim Murphy is here to answer any more detailed questions that the board might have on these contracts.
Without objection.
Morning. Tim Murphy, Warren County Coroner. As was just stated, Albany Medical, what they did is they more than doubled their price. It was $860 to use their morgue. They raised it to $2,000. One of the problems at Saratoga, we did talk to them too, and they would only do it, and Dr. Sikorica only comes there at certain times and on certain days, and you would have to have the remains down there at 7, 9, or 11, and then if the funeral director would have to stay there and and once he's done, remove the remains from Saratoga Hospital. That's not really possible because when we call a funeral home to make a removal, we don't know who the final funeral home is going to be. So this funeral home is not going to make a removal and stay there unless you want to, once again, pay them more money to stay there, bring the body back, and also there's no refrigeration in funeral homes. So if we have a body that has been deceased for a while, we have to take it somewhere where there's some refrigeration. We can't wait 2 days to take it down to Saratoga Hospital. As he stated, Schenectady, Ellis Hospital, they're willing to do it. It would be less money, but once again, they're limited services. Just about every coroner at the meeting we had with Albany and Schenectady and Saratoga, nobody was willing to bring someone's loved one and put them in a refrigerated truck. So we decided as coroners, and that's why we're asking to approve the $2,000 that Albany Medical is going to charge us now. And as far as NMS goes, actually, in the long run, it may be less expensive because Albany Med's charges for toxicology and stuff were quite expensive. Also, sometimes it took a year to get it back. So we have people that we have unexplained, undetermined death, pending investigation. Well, you know what? Sometimes there's people that are waiting for insurance. They can't get their insurance because they've got a death certificate that says pending investigation. And we have to, at times, like I say, wait a year or more to get that back before we can get a final autopsy report and a corrected death certificate. So, is there any questions? Yes, sir.
How many instances are we talking about per year?
I believe we do around, I want to say 60 to 70 autopsies per year. We have, and I can say we used to do well over 100. And we have, with Dr. Bachman being our coroner's physician, we have been able to, we have a lot of unattended deaths where people just don't go to a doctor. They, haven't been to a doctor in years. They might have been in the hospital. So we give Dr. Bachman a call. And if they've just been in the hospital or even if they've been to a doctor elsewhere, he can look it up on his computer. And he will say, no, this person had this, this, and this. And so I'd say we've cut it down probably 35-40% from what we used to do, because we used to, just about every time it was unattended, we would send to, to Albany, or at the time it was Glens Falls, for an autopsy. And now we've cut it down. And we've also, not that we're shirking our duties or anything, but usually the police, law enforcement is there. Case scenario, I had a lady the other day, she was 75 years old. They found her in bed, her kids she hadn't been to a doctor in years. She died in her sleep. So there was not a thing suspicious to me, not a thing suspicious to law enforcement. I called Dr. Bachman. He says, okay, I'll sign a certificate for her. Where that case used to be would automatically go to Albany for an autopsy. So we are trying our best to keep the cost down without shirking our duties. So,
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Supervisor
Thank you,
Loeb?
Chairman, Tim. When Glens Falls discontinued their autopsy service probably 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago?
3 years now.
3 years ago. Part of the reason was the economics, where the pathologists have a certain workload, and this was a big part of the workload. They weren't getting compensated for it. So they finally said, and I wasn't in the room, but I'm here to say, we don't want to do this anymore. It's not worth our time. That was just Glens Falls, a small island,
Well, their case more was that, what they told me was they were having trouble finding new pathologists.
who wanted to do it.
Who wanted to do autopsies. They weren't trained. Pathologists now are not trained to do autopsies. Like, they would come in, and Bill would know because he knows them down there. I saw within a 2-year period, 3 of them leave specifically because they had to do autopsies.
And they didn't want
They didn't want to do them.
But oddly enough, people die.
Yes.
So traditionally the hospitals have provided this as a public service, part of their business model. But their business model has come up against a lot of pressures economically, not just in Glens Falls, but statewide, nationwide. And perhaps we're looking at this. This is going to keep going on. People are going to keep dying. We're going to need these autopsies. We're looking at this from the wrong angle, and it probably should be at a task force level, at the state level, to figure out what's going on here. How do we get the hospitals who have traditionally done this public service back in the fold to continue to do it? Because if we piecemeal this, this is Albany, but it's going to spread out, and maybe it's already happening in Rochester, Buffalo, and New York City.
No, they have regional. Syracuse, Albany, New York City, in Buffalo area and stuff. They do have regional centers for this. That's where they go. It doesn't go to a specific hospital.
So is that a model that perhaps
Right, and that's one of the things we talked about at our organization meeting, is we've set up a couple committees, short-term and long-term, on this. But short-term, Albany was there, their controller and stuff, and it's like he says, we're talking millions of dollars to set up one of these things. It'd have to be, you're talking 21 counties that are going to have to come together and agree on this. So it's a long-term fix away from something like that.
Well, we thank you for being here this morning, and given the weather and everything. And Supervisor Sokol, would you like to make a motion to introduce resolution number 1?
I would, please.
Do we have a second on resolution number 1? Mr. Simpson? Any further discussion? All those in favor of bringing this to the floor for consideration signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Supervisor Sokol, regarding resolution number 2, would you like to make a motion to bring this to the floor?
Please.
We have a motion by Mr. Sokol on resolution number 2. Do we have a second? Supervisor Bramer on the second. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That has now been brought to the floor as well. Do you have numbers?
Yes, floor resolution number 1 will now be resolution number 461, and floor resolution number 2 will be 462.
Very good. Supervisor Sokol, are you going to continue with your report, or are you complete?
Yeah, thank you for that. And I do appreciate the county coroner coming here. We do have some brighter news. Treasurer Swan is here to give us a brief report.
Good morning again. The only thing I have to say is sales tax is still up around the 5% range. I would think at this point of the year, that's probably going to hold true, somewhere right around that number. We got the October payment in, so that's great news for the county. I think that this will help with some of the things that Supervisor Thomas was talking about for the one-time expenditures maybe next year. If we've got this is something I think that will help us. So that's it. Any questions? Anybody want to fire away?
Supervisor Bramer?
Yes. Since you're up there, may I ask a question about the funds in the Gaslight Village parking fees account? There's a couple of resolutions about that, and I just wanted to know what the balance is.
The balance? I don't know off the top of my head. We can get it for you quickly,
Okay.
I think, but I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't carry those in my head.
Well, Mike, that's good news. Thank you very much. And maybe since we're Commissioner Superintendent Hajos, if you could quickly on their finance report on the news that we received. I believe it was yesterday on Bridge, New York.
I can do that. I was going to do it at the DPW committee meeting. We've submitted the county itself has submitted for 2 bridges and 4 culverts under the Bridge New York program. The governor's office called, I believe, Ryan last week, and I just got the official word yesterday that we received, out of the 6, we received 4 worth $5.5 million.
That's
so
great.
We'll be doing 2 bridges. One of them's in Queensbury. Give me a minute to think about the other one. The other one, I believe, is in Bolton, and then 2 culverts, one up at 13th Lake, and one in Queensbury on Fall Street.
Oh, that's certainly good news. Thank you. Thank you. Supervisor Leggett? Mm-hmm.
Would this be time to ask about the mortgage tax?
I think so. If you do it quickly, sure. Why
Okay.
not?
Just for explanation to the board, the mortgage tax has come out, and these are the second payments that's in our packet here, which there's reductions since last year, but overall it's up. How is the mortgage tax appropriated to the town?
I mean, how does it get back to the towns?
That's right, proportionally.
I don't know, to be honest with you. I can't answer that question.
Yeah, that would be a question for the county clerk. We will certainly get you that information. There's a couple of different elements to that. It gets a little bit detailed, but we'll get you that information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
And just lastly, Mr. Chairman,
Absolutely.
I guess that, with the news from our superintendent for the bridge work, it is going to be a true Thanksgiving.
How about that?
That's planned.
Thank you. Supervisor Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen, for your comments. Appreciate it. On October 23rd, we had a budget committee meeting, and that was the first time that the budget committee got the particulars to the 2019 proposed budget. The meeting lasted an hour or so, and there was good discussion. As you know, on November 2nd, I presented the budget officer's proposed budget. The board did adopt a tentative budget. That led to another budget committee meeting on November 8th. That lasted better than 2 hours, and there were several proposals to amend the budget, and they were, I think, thoroughly discussed. I think everybody's proposal was listened to, and that's where we are. We're here today. So thank everyone for their time on the 8th. That was, I thought it was a very good meeting.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Supervisor Hyde.
No report.
Supervisor Garrity.
We have a couple resolutions from personnel. Resolution 460 is
requesting that we set a public hearing next month for the local law number 1 of 2019, setting the salaries for the persons 2019. That's in your packet. Yesterday we did attend Intercounty out in Herkimer County. And saw a tour of a brand new distribution center for Tractor Supply. It's not up and running yet, but it's a nice facility right off the freeway. One of the things they did bring up yesterday, they were talking about the corners, and I thought they told us Albany Med affected 17 different counties. So, and they do it differently all over the state. Some out in the western part, the counties run a corners autopsy facility. So it's done, and it's a real concern of everybody, and they did talk about it all the time, but I don't think they mentioned that Staff there, Cicarella, couldn't practice there. So it's a concern for many of the counties in our area, and we did have another enlightening trip yesterday. I took them out Route 5 because I like trains, and I wanted to see trains on the track. But the route out there, they didn't like it because they don't like the history to see St. Johnsville and Town Bridge and Fonda and Folksville and some of those places. So, on the way back, they made me get on to take the thruway back, which I didn't want to do, but they said I would. They told me to turn left, I turn right. They get excited about that. Now we're getting on the thruway, right? So as I go to the thruway, I have the county van. I don't drive it a lot, but I go in there and I pull up to the toll booth and get a ticket because I figured, we don't have easy pass on the county. But he sat there for a minute. I said, geez, is this guy ever going to hand me a ticket? He opens the door and says, you got easy pass, sir. So, as you know, I've been ripped all the way from Herkimer to Tech. But the funny thing about it, the guy who ripped me the most was the guy who got stopped by the Secret Service twice over here in Washington. I can't understand that. But we had another good trip, and it was another good meeting. And the concerns brought up today are concerns that everybody feels. So I thought before they got me, I would share that enlightening story with them. And by the way, on the way back, looking off the thruway, there was 2 freight trains heading south. So as disappointed as I was, we made it back. That's it. Preemptive strike on something like that's always advisable. Yeah. Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Criminal Justice, Public Safety have 2 resolutions in front of you today. Resolution 438, 439, both are for agreements. One's for Emergency Services Marketing Corp. For that I Am Responding contract, $19,200. That's often to the finance as well. And the other one is authorizing agreement for taser batteries and these equipment on a 5-year agreement, about $6,400 a year. That's what we have today.
Thank you. Supervisor Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In front of you today we have 2 resolutions. 436 is a resolution proposing a lease agreement with Schermerhorn Aviation to provide full and limited fixed base operator services to deploy Denton Memorial Airport and setting a public hearing for the same. Resolution 437 is amending our agreement with Nixon Peabody to do legal work in regards to our property owned on River Street in the town of Queens.
Thank you. Supervisor McKibben.
Just one item, Mr. Chairman. Resolution 440, approving the memorandum of agreement between the 5 counties and the Lake Champlain, Lake George Regional Planning Board. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you. I don't have a report, but I would like to thank Supervisor Thomas for your work on the budget and for calling the second budget meeting on the 8th. That was very productive, I felt like. And there were some good proposals, good discussion about them. There was support for some of them, not all. And I think that there is a compromise position to be had that we will bring up later during discussion on the resolutions to amend the budget.
Thank you. Supervisor Loeb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Support Committee met at the end of October, but I have nothing significant to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no report this morning.
Supervisor Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. From the Health, Human, and Social Services, we have 3 resolutions. 444 is executing a memorandum of understanding between Warren County and Adirondack Health to provide health recovery solutions to Warren County Public Health. 445 is amendment to the agreement with Delta Health Technologies, and Resolution 446 is authorizing an agreement with Kathleen Ryan to provide physical therapy services. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Cornell Cooperative Extension didn't meet in November, but they are moving rather quickly on the pole barn out in back, and they're going to have that closed in. They're working on it today. The roof's on, and they'll be able to work inside during the winter. Our next meeting is going to be November 26th. Public Works met on October 23rd, and we have two resolutions came out of that meeting. One is amending the agreements with various municipalities for roadway maintenance, including a category for equipment improvement to adjust the rates back to 2018. The equipment improvement rate was increased by $2,000 for those towns outside of the basin because they have funding through other sources for equipment. We have Resolution 450, which is authorizing an agreement with the town of Thurman to allow the county to proceed with repair and relocation of the River Road Railroad crossing and signals, with the understanding that the town of Thurman will reimburse the county upon receipt of their CHIPS funding. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Supervisor Merlino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tourism doesn't have any resolutions and no report for tourism. We didn't meet last month. Two resolutions, 447. That's what Ms. Bramer just questioned, was to pay maintenance fees and cleaning of the rooms at the Charliewood Park, and to be included in installation of the security. If any supervisor, and not only myself, but we all get these packets. If you have questions, if you give us a call, we can get answers for you at the meeting or have it before the meeting so everybody doesn't get stumped with questions. But right now in that account, the best of my knowledge, is about $15,000 to $18,000. Okay, but we'll get a better number for you. Yeah. Resolution 448 was a request to use a portion of the Charliewood Park during the Wine and Beer Festival to have a sectioned off for children playground, and we approved that, and they will be paying $250 for that. And as far as Mr. Garrity goes, I mean, he's only complaining because when we got to the tolls, he said we all have to chip in and pay for the toll. And he got surprised when we didn't have to pay it. So it was a good trip, and thank you, Mr. Garrity.
Sorry.
Oh, I have one other thing, too, and thank you, Frank Thomas, for a great job with the budget. I think it worked out really well this year. It's something in my 13, 14 years here where we had questions from supervisors in advance for the budget to have a meeting to go over each one of the points and discuss it. And I think that's a great, great thing, Frank, that you did on that. And we all got to learn a little bit more. And I'll make one comment about tourism and OPTAX, because Mr. Dickinson's not here. I mean, it's been about 8 years, no money in the county budget has been supporting tourism. It all comes from that occupancy tax. So a lot of times, people see what we're trying to spend the occupancy tax on, but it's not in the county budget. Unless a county person stays in a hotel, motel, or bed and breakfast in Lake Luzerne, they have no money into the money that we collect on the OPTAX. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Strauss.
Well, thank you. No committee report.
Supervisor Wild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No report.
Supervisor Beatty.
No report.
Report of the County Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my privilege this month to recognize two individuals who celebrated their 25th anniversary of employment with the county. They are Michelle Rodriguez of the Probation Department and Linda Ellis of the Sheriff's Department. Thanks to both of you for your hard work and dedication, and we wish you continued success. Congratulations. On Wednesday, October 24th, I met with the PSBA to continue negotiations on their collective bargaining agreement, which has been out since December 31st, 2017, and also spoke with Labor Council regarding the pending interest arbitration with the PBA contract which has also been out since December 31st last year. On Thursday, October 25th, I met with the district attorney to review his planned office expansion as a result of the courthouse project. I also met all of his staff, who are an extremely hard-working group, and I'd like to publicly thank them for their dedication and the long hours that they put in. On Friday, October 26th, I traveled to the Regional Planning Board offices with the Chairman and Supervisor Strau to review their progress on tightening up the loan program and collecting past due amounts. There's still a lot of work to do, but I'm pleased to report they're moving in the right direction. And then throughout the month, since the last board meeting, I continued to hold a series of meetings with the public defender and assigned council administrator regarding the 5-year plan, ILS-funded Hurl Herring implementation statewide. And I also held many meetings in my office with supervisors on matters relating to the proposed 2019 budget. I want to thank all of you for your interest and active involvement in the budget process. It's made for a better package. On Tuesday, November 13th, I was invited by the Adirondack Regional Chamber of Commerce to participate in a presentation outlining the state of the county, which the chairman already mentioned. The chairman and the budget officer attended with me. We took questions for about an hour, and we're grateful for the opportunity to better explain to the business community what the county does and how we do it. I'd like the board finally to be aware that there's been a change on the last item on today's meeting agenda, the report of equalization and apportionment of the county tax levy, and it's due to an Article 7 settlement reached between the City of Glens Falls and the Mills Apartments. As a result of that agreement, the assessment rolls had to change in order to remove approximately $1.9 million from the equalized full value in Glens Falls. This had the effect of reducing the county property tax to be levied in Glens Falls by $6,968, and that amount must shift to the other towns according to their revised percentage of the countywide equalized full value. I have the dollar impacts on each town. If any supervisor's interested, I can provide those. But as a result of this change, resolution number 459, which specifies the city's share of the county property tax, must also be changed. The initial amount was $4,028,690.71. The new amount, $4,021,723.19. That revised resolution is on your desk. And I'd also like to note that the county tax rate now rounds up to $3.98.7 per thousand, as opposed to the previously reported $3.98.6 per thousand. So that's an increase of 0.3 cents per thousand compared with the 2018 tax rate. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Report of the county attorney.
No report, thank you.
No report. Reading of communications.
The following is correspondence received by my office since the October board meeting, all of which has been emailed to the board previously. Report of criminal and family workload for September 2018 from the Warren County Probation Department. Minutes from the Warren Washington County IDA and CDC. The approved minutes from their October 16, 2017 annual meeting of the Audit and Finance Committee. Civic Development Corporation August 13, 2018 meeting minutes. IDA August 13, 2018 meeting minutes, and CDC October 17, 2018 Executive Committee meeting minutes. Letter from the East Shore Screw Lake Association clarifying their previous communication from August 26, 2018 to indicate that they are supportive of the proposed ban on single-use plastic bags only if it is reasonably likely to reduce plastic in the environment. Letter from Fitzgerald Morris Baker Firth providing notice of public hearing regarding the KDBF Ventures LLC project in the city of Glens Falls. We received resolution number 5 of 2018 from the Adirondack Park Local Government Review Board, which opposes the adverse abandonment of 30-mile section of railroad commonly known as the Sanford Lake Branch. Capital District Regional Off-Track Betting Corp. September payment in the amount of $3,433. Town of Johnsburg, resolution number 140 of 2018, allowing the tax collector to accept partial payments of town and county taxes. Warren Washington County IDA and CDC proposed 2018 budgets, and Washington County Board of Supervisors resolution numbers 270 and 271 of 2018, which appointed Travis Whitehead and Brian Campbell to the Warren Washington County IDA and CDC.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to address the board regarding any resolutions presently before the board? There being no one, roll call. I'm sorry. Reading of resolutions, excuse me. I missed one.
Resolution numbers 434 through 460 were mailed to the board and posted to the county website last week. Proposed resolution number 459 was amended after mailing, as explained by Mr. Moore. Copy of that revised resolution is on your desk, and a motion is needed to approve the revision.
Motion to approve the revision. Supervisor Simpson, second Supervisor Leggett. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Both of the proposed floor resolutions have already been brought to the floor, and I would remind you that those are numbers 461 and 462.
Right. Once again, I'll ask, is there anyone in the audience wishing to address the board regarding resolutions? There being no one, I'll ask the supervisors, anyone needing a roll call?
Not a roll call, but an opportunity to amend a resolution.
If you could just wait one moment, I'll be right back to you, Mr. McDivitt. Any requests for roll call? Mr. McGowan?
Yes, 436, please.
Roll call 436. Supervisor Bramer.
On 443, if I could just recuse myself, if that could be noted.
Supervisor Bramer is recusing herself from 443. That will be so noted. What's that? Yes, and therefore that will be a roll call.
Okay, thank you.
Any other requests for roll call? There being none, Supervisor McDevitt.
Yes, I would like to amend Resolution 456 with the following changes, which you should have on your desk, and they are, I suspect you have those on your desk.
There's a motion by Supervisor McDevitt to amend the 2019 budget. Is there a second to this motion? Supervisor Bramer. Let's open discussion on the amendment. As I understand the amendment, it includes a sheet that totals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it adds at the bottom $73,434. Is that correct, Peter?
Yes.
That's the proposed amendment to the 2019 budget, and I assume that that those cuts would be recorded on the levy?
Correct.
So these would be the cuts to expenses, and they would be recorded on the levy, correct?
Correct.
That's the motion. Ms. Bramer, is that your second, your understanding on the second?
My understanding, some of the items would not come out of the levy because they are being moved to the contingency fund, but the balance of it does come out of the property tax levy. And it would be removed from the expense side.
Peter, if you could, just for the board members, if you could be specific on your motion.
Basically, want to thank Frank for, again, having the budget meeting. I think it was a full-throated discussion, and basically, do you want me to talk to the specifics of what I'm asking for here?
I think,
and
if I'm understanding...
The rationale for it, yeah?
Yeah, I think that what you were, as I understood the original motion, it was a deletion, but I think Ms. Bramer's suggesting that she was looking that some of these be transferred from these lines to a contingency account. So there's a differing aim in the motion. If you guys could...
It's actually, why don't we let Claudia talk to that issue?
Okay. Claudia, what exactly are you putting?
If you look at the first one and the last one, those two would come out of the property tax levy.
That would be, let's just stop there. So delete human resources clerk and reduce contingency account would come out of the levy.
Correct. The other ones are actually just shifting money, so it does not reduce the property tax levy. it's indicated there, the codes. County Administrator Moore did help me put together the exact code so that we would have it ready with the specifics. But the bottom line is the proposal that you had brought up, Chairman Conover, the other day in our budget meeting, was to move the money that was in the raises above the 2.6 over to a contingency fund so that we could then distribute that money as we saw fit once our administrator came up with a more balanced and appropriate way to distribute our salary compensation package to our very best employees.
So Peter, if you would allow me to facilitate here a little bit, I think it would be best to take these in two parts. I think the first part would be that, if I understood your motion, that you would be looking to delete the first item, human resource clerk, and also reduce the contingency appropriation, and those dollar amounts totaling $74,434 would be, then we would reduce the levy by that amount. Is that correct?
Sure.
Ms. Bramer, is that your understanding of item 1 and the last item on the sheet?
Yes.
Okay. So
and a reduction to gross appropriations.
And a reduction in gross appropriations, and which would result in a decrease in the levy, correct?
Correct.
In the levy.
Yes.
That's the motion that's on the floor. Now I'll open it up to discussion. Supervisor Garrity.
Weren't these were vetted by committee,
They were?
and they were defeated by the budget committee, correct?
They were.
That's all I want to know. I'll ask for a roll call on any of these.
Okay. There's a roll call on amendments. Supervisor Loeb.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I recall from the last meeting there was discussion over the amount that we have in our contingency and that we were actually criticized, I think if that's the word, Treasurer's Office, for not having a contingency account high enough. And that was several years ago, so due to inflation, it probably should even be higher than the original recommendation from several years ago. And it looks like this resolution is reducing the contingency below what was recommended several years ago, which would set us up to be criticized again by the audit.
Supervisor.
Is that correct?
Supervisor Driscoll, did I see your hand?
No.
Oh, okay. Supervisor Bramer, we'll return to you.
Thank you. Supervisor Garrity, it was discussed in the Budget Committee meeting. It was, I would say, a fairly balanced discussion. I think people were in support generally, but it was defeated on a 4-6 vote, 7-4, if you counted the chairman too. So I thought it was important that we still bring it to the full board for a discussion by the body. And to your point, Supervisor Loeb, I believe, and the Treasurer's Office is here, they can correct us, but we got criticized for not having, I think it was $250,000. Right now, the budget line is $623,000, so we're quite a lot higher than $250,000. And I understand that money does have some of it earmarked for the PPA settlement. However, I'm confident that our negotiating team and our county administrator will get us the best possible deal, and that we will have enough to have the settlement, to have a little cushion in our contingency account, and still reduce it by the $51,000. And that's what I'm asking us to do in order to reduce our tax levy and give our taxpayers a little break. This is a good year. We had a great year in 2018. We just heard our sales tax is up again. Let's give our taxpayers a small break by cutting the tax levy.
Supervisor Diamond.
I got a question. If we amend this resolution, is that going to have any impact on Resolution 459 on the levy on the city of Glens Falls?
Yes.
Yes. I'd like to add to what Supervisor Bramer has suggested. 2018's expectations look very strong. On the general fund side, we look like we're going to have a fund balance on the general fund of $990,873, which tells me that we're going to exceed the expense side by almost $1 million. I don't see any harm in reducing the contingency account, which we are asking taxpayers to contribute to in this time of the calendar, in this budget. I support that recommendation she's showing, because if we look at the estimated revenue, we're going to have a strong year this year.
Supervisor Leggett.
Well, several things here that I'm trying to find this in the budget as I'm looking at the salary schedule here. So under the first one there, delete human resources clerk part-time, pay $14.35. .13, I'm looking at $14.35 general human resources. I don't really see where that is coming out of on page 22 of the salary schedule of the tentative budget. Also, in this equation, I'm putting together the whole budget. We work with the tax cap and on various things. Would this adversely affect our ability next year on what we could raise if need be?
Well, next year will be based upon what's called the growth rate. So that's the primary driver. But the since we did have some money in the increase that was I think they called it a carry forward. Frank, maybe you could help out here a little bit, a carry forward, so that it would reduce that by a little bit.
Yeah, it's what's called a carryover along with the growth rate and the inflation factor. We could have raised 2.7%, or it was about $1,100,050, somewhere around there. And currently the increase in the levy is at $1,051,000. So and it's a 2.41% increase in the levy.
I just would ask at this stage, Frank, and maybe you and Ryan could speak to this, since we just heard from the coroner and I was doing some simple math in my mind. Maybe, Ryan, maybe you could speak a little bit to what you think the implications of...
Sure. And please correct me if I'm wrong, Rob and Treasurer Swan. I believe that we have a carryover from last year that would have gone into our calculation this year, and that we would lose that carryover for the following year. But to the extent that we did not go up to this year's limitation under the tax cap, we would be able to use that difference as a carryover for the 2020 tax levy. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And relative to what the coroner's message was today in the budget?
Yeah, the coroner, I asked Coroner Terry Como to put together an estimate as to how much more he might need in his budget next year. Currently, we have $100,000 in the contractual lines to pay for these toxicology and morgue services. He estimated, based on the 2017 autopsies that we ordered, that if we had a similar amount in 2019, he may need an additional $85,000 to be appropriated into his budget. That would either come from contingency or it would be a fund balance appropriation.
And there's, just so everyone's clear, there's a very distinct difference between those two types of appropriations. One is within our operating budget, and the other comes out of our savings. And if you don't continue to come out of your savings for that, you're going to have to buy it out of your fund balance. So there's a distinct difference there in terms of budgeting. I'm not sure if, Frank, maybe you could speak to that a little bit as well.
Well, that kind of goes to the proposal that I made, where I took several items out of the budget, several requests and items themselves. One-time expenses was about $1.2 million, I think it was, 1.3, and I feel that it's, you know, they can be funded through 2019 because we will have a good fund balance, and also the board gets to debate it, decide how much of that 1.3 million they want to spend, if they want to spend it, and vote on it. And it's a one-time expense, but you're not appropriating more of fund balance into the budget, because once it's in the budget, it's very hard to reduce it. You know, once you go from 1,257,000, if you put another, say, 500,000 in there, then you have to find cuts in expense or other revenue to reduce that appropriation, because it carries forward to the following budgets. So you know, it gets because you always have more expenses coming at you next year, and I think we're exceeding our expenses are exceeding our revenue now.
So that $80,000 would commonly come out of our contingency, which is part of the recurring nature of the budget. If you take that money from the fund balance, then you have to find a replacement to that in succeeding years, or you're depleting each year your fund balance by that amount as well. So I just want everyone to understand, that that's where my simple math was that was a significant increase going to be at some point next year. Maybe not in the first month, but at some point throughout the year, we're going to have gone through that code, and then we're going to have to be making transfers. So any further discussion on the proposed amendment? Peter?
Yes, I really think we haven't talked about the rationale and the motivation for what is being proposed here. And the significant question is, going forward in Warren County, the equity of how employees basically are given raises within the confines of our system. Basically, what we're saying is that employees should be limited to a 2.6% increase. I believe 2.6% to be very generous. It is not 1%, it's not 0%, and it also should not be 5%. So the $64,000 question is, why are some department heads getting a 5% increase and some department heads getting a 2.6% increase?
We'll get to that question in the next motion. The motion in front of us deals with the deletion of the Human Resources clerk and the reduction of the contingency account. That's the motion that's in front of us presently. And I'll ask the clerk on a roll call then to call the question on that motion, that amendment.
Mr. McGowan?
No.
Mr. Sokol?
No.
Mr. Thomas?
No.
Ms. Hyde?
No.
Mr. Garrity?
No.
Mr. Leggett?
No.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
No.
Mr. Driscoll?
No.
Mrs. Frazier?
No.
Mr. Simpson?
No.
Mr. Merlino?
No.
Mr. Strauss?
No.
Mr. Wild?
No.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
No. That motion fails, and now I'll return to Mr. McDevitt on the second part of your proposal, which deals with the balance on the sheet, which I believe, why don't you make the motion? I believe it's to transfer. It's a transfer motion, or perhaps Ms. Bramer, you should make the motion.
Sure. It's the balance of the sheet. So it's reducing all of the salary increases down to 2.6 to make them level, and it does not reduce the tax levy. It's simply moving that money into the contingency account.
So is there a second, Mr. McDevitt? Are you seconding that motion? For the board, I think what's being advanced is to transfer the proposed increases to the items listed 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 on the sheet from the appropriation lines that are noted to the contingency account. Is that correct, Ms. Bramer?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. McDevitt on the second? That's
Yep.
correct. Discussion on this proposed amendment. Supervisor Leggett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This hits close to home because the town of Chester just adopted the budget, and as the budget officer for the town of Chester, I put a lot of work into looking through all the wages on things, and that's the biggest increase that town budget has. So very mindful of it. But in looking at all the jobs and the job duties as the executive of the town, I went above the 2.5% that was usually across the board. It's for salary adjustments. When you review what people do and you put it into line of the job responsibilities and common compensation for that, there are some things that come out above, in our town's case, that 2.5%. And I would trust that with the process that we have on evaluation of departments and such, and scoring, that this has gone through a review process by our committees, that I would trust. But I see if it's not, please help me be more informed about it.
Any further discussion, Supervisor Thomas?
Well, this, these things fall right on my shoulders, so I have explained this at least twice now, maybe 3 times. So
We understand, Frank.
I've never been comfortable with the way the salaries are adjusted, as long as I've been budget officer. Last year we did have an evaluation process. This year we had 17 department heads that got a 5. So, and we didn't have the dollars to compensate each one of them. So we didn't really go by the evaluations. But these type of raises have been done many times in the past, and at considerable more expense than what these are. So, like I said, I'm not going to explain each one I have. So.
This was discussed at length in committee, but I mean, we're here. We have to. Anyone else wishing to speak to this resolution? Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've had a chance to take a look at the budget, as we all have. Part of my fiduciary responsibilities as a supervisor is certainly to look at ways to reduce the bottom line. I voted no on the previous resolution because I'd like to explore with through the Personnel Committee ways this coming year to better maximize some of the duties and responsibilities of department heads and their staff members to address particular issues that are going to benefit the entire county, all the residents of Warren County that depend on us. The number that is striking to me as the newest member of this board is 856. That's the number on October 29th of employees of Warren County, full-time, part-time. They're individuals who are providing services and programs and initiatives, quality of life programs to all of the residents of Warren County. Again, if there's an issue with a salary increase beyond the 2.6%, I'd like to explore through personnel ways that we can better utilize those individuals, and I think there's going to be matters that apply to the county that we could increase, not workload, but again, have them getting into different areas that are going to benefit the county as a whole.
Supervisor Beatty.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing we as a board can have is credibility, fairness, and honesty. When 17 department heads get the top rated 5, which is the top rating, 1 to 5, yet we go up and above board of the recommended 2.6% increase, it then creates a credibility problem with everyone in this room. Some department heads have already contacted me wondering why they weren't giving above 2.6%. And I didn't have an answer. The fact of the matter is, if we don't have consistency and fairness, what do we have here? Now, I know going into 2020, Supervisor Wild, myself, and a few other supervisors have recommended to our county administrator how to fix this problem. But why do we have to keep the problem rolling just because we've done it in the past. That to me is a very weak argument. Just because you jumped off the bridge before, does that mean you got to do it again? No, that's not fair to all the other employees in this county. And so, although it's rather embarrassing at this late juncture, I'm going to have to support maintaining the maximum 2.6% increase and not picking and choosing winners and losers when 17 department heads all got the winner classification, yet they don't get it financially. So I know we'll have the problem fixed. I have a lot of confidence, like I said, in Mr. Moore to fix the problem going forward, and I'd like to, unfortunately, fix the problem now in the sense of unfairness that I feel is being perpetrated upon all the county employees. So I will support this amendment.
Are we ready for the roll call then on the,
No,
Mr. McGowan?
You know, I brought it up at the committee, and I'll bring it up again. I've worked for myself for 35 years, and I would always have loved a, 2.4, 2.5% increase in my wage every year. But I have to go with what the market is. I had a hard time biting at committee, and I'm still fighting it. You were hired for X amount of dollars, and you do get a increase every year. And after hearing all the perfect scores that we got with the other ones, I kind of feel that it might come back and bite us by not, giving all the other ones. So I'm going to have to agree with Supervisor Beatty and Claudia in that we a better study and like to hold off and just keep everything at the norm of what we have to go with the 2 point as everybody else, 2.4%. 6? 2.6. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Supervisor Weil?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Just briefly, I agree with the comment that Mr. Beatty, Supervisor Beatty made about the process we have today. It needs to be fixed, and I'm comfortable that we'll put some effort into that for next year. We have 17 out of 36 or 38 directors and department heads getting 5s across the board. To me, getting a 5 on a review is basically walking on water. It's not doing your job. It seems like that bell shape, that shape of that bell-shaped curve is skewed high, and we need to fix that. But at the same time, we need to look at a number of different factors. We're here with the public trust to do the best we can with the money. That's the budget. The budget, I have no idea how many lines are in that budget, but we're talking about maybe 20 or 30 lines here when there's hundreds of lines in the budget where there's opportunities where we might be able to save some money. There's also the issue of morale, and I think that's been something that we discussed in committee. It's important for us to consider the workforce that supports the county activities and how we support them going forward. Now, the process was broken in the past, as was discussed in the committee meeting and an executive session, because we don't want to talk about specific personnel in open session. But there were reasons given for why these were put in the budget. They may have not been the best reasons, but they were valid reasons in my opinion. And I think we need to go forward with the recommendations of the budget officer as defined in the committee and work hard to fix the process next year so that people that get 5s on their review are truly exceptional employees. And we need to find a way to motivate our leadership in the county and not give across-the-board 2.6% raises. What's the motivation there? Truly. So I will disagree with this motion and not move forward, but thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Can I just respond quickly?
If no one else that hasn't spoken wishes to speak, we'll return. Supervisor Merlino?
I'm going to start a war in here, but we're also concerned, especially some of our colleagues, about what we pay our employees. There's plenty of us sitting here. Every year new people come in, they make the same amount of money as the people that have been here for 10, 15, 20 years. Sometimes I don't feel that's necessary. There's plenty of people on this board collecting health insurance from this county. In my town, I just eliminate health insurance on my board because we can't afford it. You're all talking about cutting budgets. Why don't we take away health insurance from everybody sitting here that gets it? And I know that's a large number. So I mean, we're beating up on our employees with all these great ideas and let's cut the cut and cut. Why don't we come up with a solution next year that new supervisors don't come in at the same amount of money that people have that are sitting here today, and also collect health insurance. I mean, you're beating up on the people that have to work for us. And I, myself, in my town, I say I'm only as good as my employees. I'm only as good as the people that pick up the garbage and plow the roads, because that's what people look at. And when they call me, the road isn't plowed, the garbage isn't picked up, that's a reflection on me. So right here, we're sitting here fighting over a couple $1,000. Any one of you guys, I don't know who does and who doesn't because I never checked into it. I don't take health insurance here. So the people sitting next to me, he's making more money than I'm making because he's getting health insurance. I don't know if they get it or not. I'm just, But, and travel money, your percentage of travel, just to get here and go back. I don't take any in my town because I feel that's part of my salary. And I don't take any from the county of travel because I feel it's part of the money I make here. And I've never said anything, and I've been here 13, going on my 14th year. And it's tough to see people come in last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, making the same as I make. So now, what is the coalition to that over what we're talking about our department heads? I can't figure it out, and that's the end of my speech. Thank you.
Supervisor Loeb?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to express that I agree with the spirit and actually a lot of the content of what Supervisor Molino said. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll return to Supervisor Bramer.
I just find it really ironic that we talk about cutting costs and that we should lower our expense size because we're already over our expenses outpace our revenue, and then no one would vote for this deleting one position. I'm not talking about laying off someone. It's just really ironic that there are people that talk about cutting expenses, and yet you won't take an action, a simple action, to actually cut expenses. And instead, you're voting to increase our costs in the long term because we're hiring a person that will have legacy costs on and on and on. And then Supervisor Wild, you'd like to improve the process and have incentives for our department heads to do better, and yet you won't support this in order to put money into a pot to give them bonuses if they do a great job. I just don't get that. It's completely unreasonable to me. And I wish that people would, I don't know, but as far as your point, Supervisor Merlino, I do agree with you. There are some probably things that we need to look at ourselves, especially that travel money coming from all over the place in our county. I certainly do not ask for travel money, but I live in Glens Falls, so it's not that big of a deal. But there are others coming from other parts of the county that make a lot of money off that little scheme. Thank you.
Supervisor McDevitt.
One short last comment. Seems like this discussion has come full board. A 2%, 2.6% increase is being characterized in this room as a 2.6% decrease. That's kind of what I'm hearing, okay? This is a 2.6% increase, significant. And let me just give you one analogy. I spoke to a friend of mine this morning on the phone. They're an employee in Queensbury. They employ 100 people. They buy components for their industry throughout the world, okay? They deal with tariffs, okay? They're a profitable organization, but their business climate as it relates to tariffs is questionable, okay? I asked this person on the phone this morning, what kind of an increase are they getting in an employer that employs 100 people? They are getting 0%, a 0% increase because of the uncertainty of their worldwide marketplace. Profitable, that goes from top to bottom within the organization. That's the real world, okay? 0 versus 2.6 versus 5%. So Ryan, going forward, I certainly appreciate, the fix that's being put on it, but please, 2.6 is, to me, is generous and it's fair. Thank you.
Supervisor Wild.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I'm going to look for some help, either from the table up in front or from some other supervisors. But I'd like to put this 2.6 in perspective. We have collective bargaining units, in my mind, that drives some of these numbers. And Mr. McDevitt, our Supervisor McDevitt, based on your comment about getting a 0% raise, I've been there in the private sector. I know how that works. But if you think about this, we're talking about some of our leadership team who have people that are in the collective bargaining units that will get their 2% raise, 2.6% raise across the board. How many times are you going to cut the legs off of our leadership team before they're making less money than the people that report to them? So we need to kind of take that really big picture and understand that it's not just singling this out. It's the big picture that we're trying to readjust. And if there's someone that can help me with understanding what the collective bargaining units, if I'm not mistaken what I heard, they all get 2.6.
2.6 is based on what CSEA gets next year under the collective bargaining agreement.
Correct. Thank you.
Supervisor Lake.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For clarification of this resolution, can we have the total dollar amount that is before us to be reduced?
Let's continue the discussion while we assemble that total dollar amount. Any further discussion? Supervisor Thomas.
Just to expand on what Supervisor Wild said, it wasn't too many years ago that our department heads did not get raises at all for several years. So, just for a little history, 2.6 is because of what the collective bargaining agreements call for. I wanted to give all department heads a 3% raise, but again, the money is money, so.
Supervisor Leggett, the answer to your question is $8,413. $8,413.
This is what we're discussing right now.
That's correct.
Out of the total of the .1s for our general fund, that comes as a percentage point?
This is out of not just the .1s, but out of the benefits, the payroll, the taxes that go along with it as well, and the retirement.
Alrighty. Are we ready to call the roll on the amendment? I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
What is the amendment again?
The amendment is to transfer items 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 on the sheet in front of you, which totals $8,413 from the budget codes listed to the contingency account. That is the proposal.
It's to hold them flat at 2.6.
That may be the result of what happens, but what the action that's happening, if that was your question, was to transfer 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 dollar amounts from the codes listed to the contingency account.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Read the roll.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
No.
Mr. Thomas?
No.
Ms. Hyde?
No.
Mr. Garrity?
No.
Mr. Leggett?
No.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
No.
Mr. Driscoll?
No.
Mrs. Frazier?
No.
Mr. Simpson?
No.
Mr. Merlino?
No.
Mr. Strauss?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
No.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
No.
There's only 407 votes in favor. The motion fails.
Motion fails, 407 in favor. Further discussion regarding 456. There being no further discussion regarding 456, I'll close discussion on 456. Discussion on other resolutions.
Excuse me, I think there is still more discussion on the budget.
I asked the question. I'll be happy to reopen it.
Thank you.
Further discussion on 456, Supervisor Loeb?
No, another.
Okay, another one. Further discussion on 456, Supervisor Beatty.
Yes, I apologize. I had to leave. The last budget meeting 10 minutes early, and that was going to be my amendment to the budget. And so I had Mr. Moore pull it since I was not going to be there. But I would like to add an amendment to the budget. We've had a record sales revenue year, record. The latest numbers from the Treasury Department were up $2.55 million over 2017, of which we have half, okay? So my amendment, I would like to take that $1.2 million, which is not even the full half, and apply that towards the county tax levy, so that the taxpayers of this county can actually reap the rewards of what they've been doing to make this a successful county. Now, I know that's going to create a lot of, heaven forbid we give the taxpayers a big break, but when we do well as a county, I feel the taxpayers should participate in that because they are the county. When we do poorly, vice versa. So my amendment's going to be to take 1.25 million out of 1.2 million out of the general fund and apply it to reducing the county tax levy.
Yeah. If I could facilitate here, if you'd allow me.
Sure.
I believe the proposal is to take $1.2 million and move it from, to appropriate it from the fund balance as a revenue to offset appropriations and thereby reduce the levy by that corresponding amount.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay.
So
Before we get to that, we need to bring that amendment to the floor. Is there a second to that at this stage? We made second by Supervisor Diamond. Now let's, if you'll allow the county administrator, let's work on the specifics of the proposal.
So the proposal is to reduce the tax levy by $1.2 million?
Correct.
Okay. And the other side of that proposal is, are we increasing the appropriated fund balance by $1.2 million, or are we that's the appropriated fund balance revenue, or are we decreasing the, what are we doing? What's the balancing side of that? We either have to decrease expenses by $1.2 million, or we have to increase revenue by $1.2 million.
We're going to be adding $1.2 million to our general fund via the increase in sales tax revenue for the year. I'd like to take that $1.2 million that we've appropriated for the general fund and apply it to the county tax levy so it gets reduced.
Okay, so we're reducing appropriated fund balance by $1.2 million.
Correct.
And we're also reducing the property tax levy by $1.2 million.
Correct.
Okay.
Are we able to do those calculations? Sure. Will you just give us a moment?
Sure.
We need to...
I lost track. What's 456?
Yes, 456 is the adopting the budget. It's the resolution. 450. I'm sorry, 457.
Okay, so we ended 2017 with a general fund balance of $19,470,218. We've updated the multi-year plan to reflect what we know to be going on in 2019. And the number for the end of the year 2018, $23,125,009. So essentially what we're doing is we're no longer appropriating out of that. We are appropriating out of that amount in order to balance this budget without a tax increase. And going forward, the revenue, what we're doing is if we reduce the revenue in this budget from the property tax by $1.2 million, that $1.2 million is coming, if you look at it from a 5-year perspective, that $1.2 million comes out every year. So the impact of that over 5 years is going to be $6 million. Assuming that in the out years, then you have to also say, are we going to increase property taxes or are we not? So that $6 million gets a lot bigger if we continue to do it every year, if we hold it steady.
But if you allow me to facilitate a little further, I think what Supervisor Beatty is advancing is that we increase the appropriation out of the fund balance. Frank, you can help here, from the 1.2. There is it 1.2? Is there might be some change on that?
Yes, the general fund appropriated surplus is $1,257,422 currently.
And so, Mr. Beatty, I believe what you're recommending is that that amount be increased an additional $1.2 million to, Frank, you have a quick number on that?
Yeah, it's $2,457,422.
Thereby reduce the levy from the proposed increase to whatever that amount decreases it to. I'm not sure. Are we able to do that calculation immediately?
The proposed increase in the levy was $1,051,849.
One more time on that.
1,051,849.
49.
So this proposal will be a tax cut.
So it actually would
in the
go,
amount of difference.
It actually would not only replace the proposed increase, but it would go beyond that and would actually cut taxes by the corresponding approximately $48,000.
I'm comfortable with that. Thank you.
Discussion. I hope we've provided enough information on the amendment. And Supervisor Simpson?
I don't have my budget number here. I wasn't prepared for this. But, Frank, could you tell me what the increase in our expenditures were this year? Do you have that total number?
The salaries, I think, were around $1.2 million. As far as the other expenses, I don't really have a number. I know we reduced the budgets overall by approximately $500,000.
I think I have that number.
I don't have all those numbers in front of me.
I'd like to thank the staff, by the way, for the quick work up here on these calculating these numbers. It's a marvelous thing to watch. Supervisor Beatty.
Yeah, thank you. Let's all keep in mind also that the 2019 budget is based on the 2017 revenue. 2018 is going to come in 5.5 to 6% above 2017. So we're being very, 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 very conservative. Okay? If 2019 simply maintains 2018's pace, that's going to be approximately 2.5 to 3 million additional dollars, of which the county would get half of that. So, I mean, let's put things in perspective. We are, and I don't have any problem with the budget per se. I think Frank Thomas and Ryan and everyone else did a remarkable job. But I've always been a believer in taxpayers are better, have a better handle on spending their tax dollars than county governments or town governments or cities and whatever. I understand you got to have money to do the basic services. I get that. I fully support that. But when we have a record year and we still can't decrease the tax levy, although and we've increased the appraised value, I got a problem a little bit with that. And then when we put together a budget that's based on 2017 numbers, that we are absolutely blowing out of the water in 2018, and yet for 2019, we're going to still use those 2017 numbers. That tells me there's going to be a lot of additional dollars if we just maintain the 2018 pace. So I feel I'm fairly conservative in this, and I feel that having the towns and the residents of this county actually get a slight decrease in their tax levy, I think that's important. It's an important message to send out, and I think it's very doable from a financial standpoint, and it's not reckless, and far from it. So that's my position. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Just to Frank, maybe if you could also remind everyone the offline use of approximately $1.2 million of the fund balance for capital projects. I just want to make sure everyone's clear that the amendment plus the existing plan would be $3.7 million use of the fund balance in 1 year. I think I'm adding that correctly. Is that correct?
Yeah, the proposal was $1,288,060. Road paving $633. The DPW bridge program, which is not a one-time expense, is $170,000. Machinery, that was a bucket loader, $142,000. Two requests for equipment one out of the corrections and one out of the law enforcement budget. And also a vehicle, they totaled approximately $175,000. A website upgrade for the county, $35,000. Money, $178,000 was requested for the railroad, reduced that by $100,000 to $78,000. And the contingent account was reduced $39,000.
I have an answer for Supervisor Sokol. The adopted all funds appropriation for this year, 2018, $152,796,937, and the proposed all funds appropriation for 2019, $156,880,886.
Supervisor Lopez.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think everybody would agree that we would love to find a way to cut the tax levy, reduce the tax requests that our citizens have to pay. Supervisor Thomas has several times explained the danger of doing this through accessing the fund balance and using it as a revenue. However, Supervisor Beatty's, as I interpret it, not redefining what my interpretation is, we have this fund balance, and the public is saying, hey, we know you need $10 million to run your operation, but Chief, we're crying out loud, you've got $21 million. So I think going forward, we have to be cognizant of that and find ways to give back that money to the taxpayers without causing the dangers that Supervisor Thomas has described several times clearly to the full board. One way which I would have always supported was if we had extra money to pay down our debt liability. We have a significant amount of debt, public debt, that is affecting our budget every year. If we want to spend a couple $1 million out of the fund balance, let's put it towards that. That will not affect the revenue stream for next year, but it certainly will affect our liability and be a benefit to the public. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, the net result of the amendment, just so you know, is to reduce the tax levy, county tax levy, by $148,151.
That's from the 2018 tax levy.
That's right. That's from the 2018. Supervisor Donnie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looking at the forecast for 2018, again, it looks very healthy. Our fund balance looks like it's going to grow from the audited number in 2017 of $22,859,000. We had that discussion in the workshop or a couple of committee meetings on where do we stand, what are our policies for fund balance. Our treasurer mentioned that it's critical to the county's operations that we maintain a minimum of $10 million. And I agree with him. He said that the other part of the policy, the high end of the policy is $16 million. So what I would suggest to the board today is act on Mr. Beatty's recommendation. This fund balance belongs to the taxpayer. It's money that's been collected over many, many years through, through tax dollars, whether we're being responsible department heads and keeping our expenses down, or we're overtaxing the public. I think that we have a very comfortable fund balance. The county administrator gave us 3 tables to look at, which are very, very helpful, table 2, 3, 4, and it shows in table 3 if we use the fund balance, the remainder fund balance is down slightly, we're still going to have a healthy $22 million to go forward. That's a significant surplus. If you look recently in the city of Glens Falls, they just adopted water and sewer rates with a $15 increase. If you look at if you roll that in with the city's tax rate, the county tax rate, the school tax rate, you're at $42 to $44 per $1,000 assessed value in the city of Glens Falls. The city's not competitive. We've got to do something to lower the taxes. And I think this is a great opportunity today to add more fund balance and still have a healthy fund balance going forward, through our projections in 2021 and 22. Thank you.
You're welcome. Supervisor Leggett.
According to my calculations, everybody has this sheet in their packet here, one of the last pages, the 2019 equalization and apportionment table. For the town of Queensbury, the increase for this year on a $200,000 house comes to an increase of 60 cents. 60 cents increase. A little bit more in other towns. It's an 80 cents increase for Glens Falls. So that's what we're talking about on this proposed budget as this is before us unamended. If we want to be fiscally conservative, the thing to do is pay down debt, not use surplus to offset cost of appropriations this year. I think it comes into a fiscal, philosophical discussion. Seeing that the amount that we're talking about here of reappropriating things, using fund balance at this point, even though it is a good idea, I think I would put forth that we use that extra $1 million to pay down whatever debt that we're paying interest on, and has a larger effect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Just so everyone's clear, I think our total borrowing is in the 40-something, 40.
It's over 40. I think.
A little over 40 million. Our constitutional limit is 150.
153, is that right? 155?
Yes. 155. We have one of the best borrowing to assessed values in the state. So I'm not saying it's the best, but it's right there. All right, Frank.
And while you're talking about the debt, $425,000 of debt service. So all the debt service is backed by either levy revenue or sales tax revenue, and it's taken 3 years with the 2 projects that we did. It's taken 3 years to get all that debt service into this budget and be backed by revenues, not by money that you have in your piggy bank. So just that's while you're talking about that. And one thing the mayor said is right. We do have a healthy fund balance, and he did say that it takes many years. Over many years, we accumulated this, and that's exactly right. That's a point you want to keep in mind too. It takes many years to accumulate these fund balances. So.
And I'd
Spend
like,
it wisely.
and I'd like to thank our county administrator. You should all have received this table, these tables right here, that show the 5-year projections on what happens under different ideas, and it really reflects well, I think, at least the best in terms of the tools we have right now, what happens in 5 years, given certain decisions that we make today and beyond. So if you haven't looked at those tables, I would strongly recommend before you vote that you look at those tables. Any further discussion? Supervisor Wild.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. This is my first year going through this budget process, and it's amazing. All the different levers that get pulled and tasks that need to get done. It's really quite amazing. But I looked at it in terms of my education, and the budget that we have is highly dependent upon sales tax. And because of that, we've grown a fund balance that's basically a rainy day fund. 2008, 2009, the sales tax numbers, even though I wasn't on this board at the same time, I've been told collapsed. And this board had to go through significant troubling times with readjusting budgets, with reducing staff, with reducing services. That wasn't a pleasant activity from what I understand. So, I agree with Supervisor Beatty and the other supervisors that are saying, we have a windfall and we should give something back to the taxpayers. I'm not sure the best way to do that. If it's 1.2 million that we have, and we have 60,000 residents of the county, why don't we give everybody a $20 check? The reason that I think that's probably more appropriate is that, maybe the public doesn't understand, but we have a tax cap. And that tax cap limits what we can raise our taxes on. And if we fall in bad times, we're restricted by that tax cap in terms of what we can do. I think there are ways around it, but the one thing we don't want to do is when everyone else in the county is struggling because the economy has turned downward, that we have to go as a county board and raise taxes above and beyond what we've done in the past to help cover that gap. So the point I'm trying to make is that we do have a windfall. I'd like to find some way to give something back to the taxpayers, but we also have to be prudent about what the future holds. The 5-year plan, the ability to raise taxes, and the ability for us to provide those necessary services. So I don't know what the answer is. And Mr. Chairman, maybe I can make a modification to the motion that we put this $1.2 million into a special contingency fund so we can work on figuring out the best way to give something back to the taxpayers. Thank you.
Yeah, I just would remind everyone that the budget officer's budget does utilize fund balance to help keep property taxes down and to keep us below the tax cap. Sometimes this gets lost in the discussion. There was an appropriation of $1.2 million and change out of the fund balance that is in the budget. And unless it's purchased out of the budget by a recurring revenue, will have to stay in the budget in outlying years. There's no other way to deal with that once it's within the budget. So, and the budget officer did recommend an additional expenditure of $1 million to approximately next year out of the fund balance for one-time capital items. So I would just want to make sure that's out there. Mr. Garrity.
Just real quick, I was the one that inherited the bad times in 2009. I was the one responsible for laying off help. And I would be very careful. We're banking everything here today based on sales tax. And back then, sales tax took an awful hit. And it came upon us really fast. You don't recover from it. It took from 2009, 10, 11, 12, I think my last year as budget officer, we finally were up to like $13 million in fund balance. It took us 5 years to recover. That's just based on sales tax. Remember, there's other revenues in this budget, and if they crash and burn on you, you don't recover from them. The sheriff's revenue, the jail revenue, that's volatile. That's up and down, up and down. We're always falling behind, and you're always grabbing money to pay off what you don't get in those revenues. So it's a lot more complicated. And, it sounds nice. It sounds nice, and I agree with the taxpayers, and I don't like raising my town budget. And we've all had to sit there and wrestle with the rate increase, whether it be 7 cents or 10 cents or 4 cents. Nobody likes to raise it. But I would be very careful because of the way, looking out 5 years projection, it is going to equal $6 million. You're not going to gain the $6 million back. So this 1.2 is, although it's nice this year, you want to sit here next year and have to put a 10, 12 cent increase on your taxpayers if things don't work out, and all of a sudden the economy crashes or things happen. So I would be very reluctant. I won't vote for it. I would love to do it. I think doing the one-time items that Frank has proposed is a good way of spending some of the fund balance money down. But I just can't see it this year. I know it's a windfall, and I looked at the numbers yesterday. They were great. But I think you're making a mistake if you do it. I won't vote for it. But the rest of you can do what you want.
Supervisor Straub.
Yes, thank you. Yes, the conversations that have come up that have pointed out our dependency on sales tax revenue are justified. And they've given historical examples of that. Justified. Oftentimes, you want that fund policy, you want that fund balance to give you future fiscal stability. Now, what I've seen, and I know many of you have, is you want to, be the crusader of the day by cutting taxes and reducing your fund balance. And what that just meant was, and maybe you're not in office anymore, so you don't have to take blame for it, but it sometimes meant huge tax increases down the road. So if you want to do the fiscally conservative thing and try and maintain some kind of fiscal integrity, then you want to maintain a fiscal balance that's appropriate. Now, then you can get into the argument of what fiscal balance is appropriate. I think we need to adopt a fund balance policy that would be appropriate moving forward. The one that is based on a minimum of $10 million to take care of cash flow is outdated because your expenditures have far exceeded that original amount, and your fund balance policy should be based on 3 months expenditures or based on some percentage of expenditures so that the fund policy remains strong as your expenditure picture changes. So we need to do that, but the bottom line is, and if you look at the forecasts and everything else, so you have a rational basis to all this, is that I think what has been offered here by Frank and others is a justified fund balance policy. It shows that we have some future fiscal stability, and so I'm going to support what's before us now and not the amendment.
And once again, I just will remind everyone, because I don't want the facts to get lost, that the proposed budget does utilize almost $2.5 million of the fund balance in next year's budget. Let me state that again. It utilizes $2.5 million of the fund balance in next year's budget. And if I might editorialize, Frank, if you'd allow me, that it's because we have a healthy fund balance that we're able to do that. So it is a recognition of the fact that we have a healthy fund balance that we feel we can appropriate into our operating budget $1.2 million and appropriate an additional $1.2 million for one-time costs, and when the change is added, it's approximately $2.5 million. So that, everyone needs to understand that. There is a very serious application of the fund balance going on here. Supervisor Diamond.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. You had mentioned during the budget workshops, Frank had mentioned that he would suggest to this board to do one-time expenditures in 2019 that he felt that he wanted to keep out of the tax rolls and use fund balance. You had mentioned just now that that's over $2 million. I don't think that this board has agreed on that expense, on that one-time expense. I think that the way that Frank had suggested that, that was going to be a discussion that occurred through 2019. That's going to require us at that point in time to make those decisions. I would suggest that we carry that dialogue on those one-time expenses into the discussions for the next budget, 2020, and take the $1.2 million that everybody seems to want to spend on one-time expenditures and keep the budget flat. Thank you.
You're welcome. All righty, on the amendment then. Clerk will read the roll.
Mr. McGowan?
No.
Mr. Sokol?
No.
Mr. Thomas?
No.
Ms. Hyde? No. Mr. Garrity?
No.
Mr. Leggett?
No.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Nope.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
No.
Mr. Simpson?
No.
Mr. Merlino?
No.
Mr. Strauss?
No.
Mr. Wild?
No.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
No. Motion fails, 279-4. Further discussion on 456? There being no further discussion on 456, now, Mr. Loeb, discussion on other resolutions, if you still remember.
Yes, actually, if I could, on 456, I do remember the other, but picking up on Supervisor Leggett's comment, and the fact that, and I think what I've heard from Supervisor Garrity in the past, and Supervisor Beatty's motion, we still have this fund balance that's going to hang over us, and there's still going to be that discomfiture in the public as to why that fund balance is there. So we still have this debt responsibility. So I don't know, have any plans for whether there would be a second or whether this was passed, but I would offer a motion that we take X amount, say $1 million or $1.5 million of our fund balance and pay it towards our debt that we have, what did we say, $45 million?
I'll second that.
We have a motion to, all right, I'm going to have to focus now. You're looking to take how much from the fund balance?
Say, I mean, there's an arbitrary number, so I'll say $1.5 million.
1.5 million from the fund balance to retire debt service associated with, but you don't have a specific project. We don't know interest rates. We don't know principal and interest.
That is correct.
Without objection, could I bring the county treasurer to the podium to speak to this? If that would be okay, Mr. Loeb? Thank you. Oh, and by the way, for the board, there was a motion by Mr. Loeb, a second by Ms. Bramer.
It's a great idea, but all of our debt is now long-term bonded, and there really isn't any way to pay it down early. The way it's structured, we can't make additional payments. It's not like on a car loan where you can pay a little bit more on each monthly payment and get it done. It just, legally, we can't do it.
I guess I will withdraw my motion.
Mr.
I will
Loeb?
not withdraw my second. No, I'm just kidding. But could I just ask quickly?
This is on 456?
Yeah, whatever we were just talking about. The appropriating fund balance towards our debt service. I thought I saw we still have $525,987 that is a deficit this year, correct?
For
our debt? We have debt of $4,623,000. You guys can tell me I'm totally crazy, because I am kind of crazy at this point.
Well, the total debt is $45 million, somewhere in that range.
4.6 is what this, the multi-year plan.
I'm not sure what you're looking at there, but I mean, our debt right now as it stands is roughly $45 million. That's what the county owes.
$45 million?
$45 million.
Oh,
Excuse me.
The 4.6 is the appropriation in the 2018 budget to pay debt service, I believe.
Okay. So you're telling me out of $45 million, there's not one little bit of debt we can pay off early?
Well, I mean, no, there isn't, because we don't have any short-term notes. We've paid them all off. So now we're looking at long-term 20-year bonds, and no, you can't pay them down. Now, if you wanted to, I'm not, well, I don't know. I'm not.
I know you don't want to get in, but there, if I may offer, there will be, if you keep that thought of Supervisor Loeb and Supervisor Bramer, and I think all the supervisors, as we go into 2019, there will be many opportunities to appropriate where we will need resources to do the things that we need to do in county government. If the sales tax comes in good and we look like we're heading into a good year, we can do more for our roads. We have Raise the Age coming up. We are going to have capital costs associated with that. That might be an opportunity to use our fund balance to avoid a borrowing in that regard. So that's just a few examples. There could be many. There will be many opportunities to apply the fund balance in, as I like to say, a one-and-done kind of fashion that can save us in terms of our borrowing going forward. And so I would just offer that out there, that some of these things don't need to be immediately decided today. They can be decided as we move into throughout 2019 and beyond.
Can I just interject one more thing, Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely.
Sitting here on the sidelines, this whole conversation that's gone on about the tax levy, I heard this in 2005 in this very room by a Board of Supervisors with a $25 million surplus. And they decided to throw $4 or $5 million every year at the tax rate. And in 2009, we had $3 million left, and the then Treasurer, Frank O'Keefe, was borrowing money to make payroll every month.
$6 million a month.
Yep.
Make payroll.
It's a history lesson. I'm just throwing it out there. Believe me, I understand. I don't like to pay more taxes than anybody else. But please, I just want to just put that history lesson out there. Sitting over here, it was deja vu. I'm going, oh my gosh.
Okay.
Here we go again.
Chairman,
Further,
just one more comment in that lines. In 2015, I did an analysis of county taxes levied in the city of Glens Falls. And although it's been mentioned it's only 3 or 4 cents, back in 2015, Finch Paper was paying $259,000 a year in county tax. So what do you tell these people when the business is struggling, we have an opportunity to give back to them? No, we're going to spend the money elsewhere, or we're going to raise the tax. Those are my concerns.
I understand.
I mean, 3 or 4 cents may not mean a lot to the residential people that live in the cities or in the counties, but somebody that's paying county tax at over $250,000 a year, and then they come to me and ask me, what am I getting for services? That's a tough question.
It's all important. I agree. It's all important. I guess on 456, we're still on 456. Supervisor Sokol?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Treasurer Swan read my mind because history speaks for itself. And, there was a surplus of $20 million, which got brought down to $3 million in just 4 years. Supervisor Garrity, I believe, was budget officer at the time, and I recall laying off 35 to 40 people. Who here on this board wants to cut 35 to 40 people? Again, just an air of caution. It looks very healthy and we're in a great position, but we can do things to improve our roads. Again, history, we have had comments about how awful the roads are. We're getting to the point where we're putting money finally into the roads and rebuilding our infrastructure back up. It was brought also to the floor about raising sales tax. We wanted to go to 7.5%. This is something that Supervisor Merlino, you had a great plan to do so, but we held strong and we had to make that tough fight-to-cut job. And I just, looking at the 5-year multi-plan, I get very nervous. I really do. And I just want to put it out that there's a lot of history with longtime supervisors, and we've been through the hard times of making this surplus to what it is today. So that's all I have.
Thank you. May I close discussion on 456?
Please.
The chair will close discussion on 456. Discussion on other resolutions. Supervisor Loeb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Resolution 440, it deals with approving the memorandum between all the counties regarding the Lake Champlain, Lake George planning. There was one part of it that deals with the revolving fund status. It was my understanding, and that could be faulty understanding, that there have been adjustments, and maybe there was going to be a discontinuation of the revolving fund program. I'd like someone to apprise me of what actually is going on with that particular part of the agreement.
There was at least one out of, I believe, 4 or 5 loan programs that is being wound down. There's no plans to do additional loans from that particular program, and we're collecting on but the Regional Planning Board is collecting on the remaining debt that's out there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mm-hmm. Generally speaking, they're going to continue with the EDA program, but there's another program that they're looking to, as the county administrator said, wind down and I think, if they can, terminate. Further discussion on resolutions. All right. Reading resolutions. I'm sorry, discussion, voting on resolutions.
Resolution 434, making supplemental appropriations. Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 435, amending Warren County budget for 2018. Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 436, proposing lease agreement with Skimmerhorn Aviation to provide FBO services. Mr. McGowan?
Abstain?
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes, and I'd like to thank the people who worked on that.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
And I'd also like to ask that we send this to the Airport Advisory Group if we haven't already. I don't know if it still exists in what form, but that would be nice for them to have it right away.
We can do that.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 443, amending Resolution 400 of 2018, authorizing transfer of Queensberry parcel to the Lake George Land Conservancy. Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Recuse.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 451, amending table of organization and Warren County salary and compensation plan. Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 452, authorizing appropriation of funds from deferred revenue Gaslight Village parking to Charles Wood Park budget. Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde? Yes. Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 453 is also authorizing appropriation of funds from deferred revenue Gaslight Village to the Charles R. Wood Park budget. Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 454, authorizing treasurer to transfer funds from computer reserve fund to departmental budgets. Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 455, approving adopting Warren County Sewer District Assessment Rule. Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
Ms. Bramer?
Yes.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
Yes.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 456, adopting budget for fiscal year 2019. Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol? Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity?
Yes.
Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
No.
Mr. McDevitt?
No.
Ms. Bramer?
No.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
No.
Chairman Conover?
Yes.
Resolution 458, adopting salary and compensation plan for 2019. Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Sokol?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Hyde?
Yes.
Mr. Garrity? Mr. Leggett?
Yes.
Mr. Diamond?
No.
Mr. McDevitt?
No.
Ms. Bramer?
No.
Mr. Loeb?
Yes.
Mr. Driscoll?
Yes.
Mrs. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Simpson?
Yes.
Mr. Merlino?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Wild?
Yes.
Mr. Beatty?
No.
Chairman Conover?
Yes. All right, motion on the collective. Supervisor Beatty, Supervisor Stroud in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. I'll now offer privilege of the floor. Anyone in the audience wishing to address the Board of Supervisors?
Over here.
Just first the floor. Let me finish with the floor. All right, very good. I'll now offer privilege of the floor to Supervisor Bramer.
Thank you. I'm sorry for the public, although anyway. I just want to make a comment because Supervisor Hogan is not here. I know that we all got her email about Revolution Rail, so whatever we can do, I don't know what that is exactly at this point, but I think that we do need to be cognizant of that and maybe move something forward. Supervisor Simpson?
I've called them 4 times and they haven't returned my phone calls after they called me and left a message.
And I believe the county administrator's made some inquiries as well, but I'm not sure. It's private property, so it's not, we don't own it, as you know. But Supervisor Merlino.
Yeah, just quick on the revenues for that Charliewood Park. It's just under 11,000, I was informed.
Thank you, Jean. I'm sorry I didn't ask beforehand.
Yeah, just let me remind everyone before I forget that we're taking a group shot after the meeting right here in the boardroom. We'll have to cut and paste Supervisor Dickinson and Hogan in later on. Supervisor McDevitt.
No, I did get Andrea's email, and I after reading it, maybe I'm the dullest guy in the group, but I was I was trying to figure out what exactly she was looking for, okay? Specifically, in terms of help from the board. It was a compelling letter. God, we all want to help our fellow supervisors in their communities, but I needed to know specifically what she wanted us to do. So,
I believe a county administrator, I think, is aware of the situation and what we can do to address the concern. I think it's a concern that will arise next year, of course, and in terms of that activity. And we ourselves have a process we're going through, and I think that the answer at 15,000 feet is that I'm sure these concerns, these types of concerns and other types of concerns will be part of the process as we go forward that deal with the use of the corridor. There's many ideas, and I think that Chairman of DPW is doing, I think, a very good methodical job of advancing this process, and we will continue to advance it. Once again, everything's on the table, nothing's off the table until such time as this board takes it off the table.
So the answer is maybe?
I think at this stage, the answer is, for me, it would be I do not know. I would hope it would be a maybe. But. Supervisor Sokol.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just like to extend to everyone and their immediate families and everybody in TV land a very happy and safe Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Other announcements? There being none, motion to adjourn. Mr. Simpson to adjourn, second. Ms. Hyde on the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.